no veas, a Sevilla. Y al último que cuando ya salió la bien de regla.
It is Monday on Raid Shadow Legends, but you knew that. Now, 2025 is almost over and done with. Yes, really. Where did the time go? Right? And it's been quite the year in Raid. Some things good, some things bad, some things somewhere in between where you could make some pretty interesting rage baits by stating a controversial opinion, but we're not going to do that yet. But one thing I want to talk about, which, well, if you saw the video title and the thumbnail, I think it was pretty obvious, is the fusions that have taken place over this year. So, one of them after the other, I'm going to talk about them briefly, then rate them on a scale of S to D. Nothing in between, because otherwise that gets a bit too complicated. But without wasting much more of your time, we'll begin. So the first one in January was Mad Hatter, as part of the Alice's Adventure event. Alice. Now, this one I did skip entirely because I don't like doing mixed fusions unless it's someone who is absolutely mandatory and I would immediately want them right away. But many people did fuse this guy, and I've seen many of them have pretty good success with him. Overall, he's got a pretty decent mix of skills, and if I wasn't quite at the stage I was in the game in terms of being as picky as I was, I would have fused him as well. I'd have just sat down, sucked it up, and sat through a mixed fusion. So Mad Hatter is going to be placed in the A category. Next is Esme the Dancer. Now, Esme the Dancer caught a bit of fire at the start because people were unreasonably upset regarding how the fragments for her fragment collection fusion were in a hero's path. Now, this was the exact same cost as it would have been in a Summon Rush, but I guess people needed some topic to be grifters about, so there's that. But she's, again, a decent-ish support, mainly used for Hydra, I'd say, or maybe Chimera trials, although better options exist. Her partner, Modo of Appeal, is kind of generic attack legendary. With her as partner bonus, he is better. She's better with him as well, but you're probably not going to be using both at the same time anyway, so I'm going to just cover her as a standalone. I did fuse her mainly because I'm struggling with Curse City. Yeah, you know, Curse City. We've got Grim Forest nowadays where that sort of shit doesn't happen. But apart from that, I haven't used her too much. So I'll put her in B. Now, next in March was Lord Entertainer Fabian. Now, I mean, really, do I even have to explain this one? I made this with the general assumption that you at least play the game, which is why I haven't got them on screen in terms of what they do, going over their skill set in general. In fact, if you don't play the game, why even watching this? This is for Raid Shadow Legends. You know that mobile slot that was really notorious during COVID for the marketing campaign that it had. Why are you watching a thing about fusions being ranked for? Anyway, yeah, Fabian goes in S. That's absolutely without any sort of question or doubt whatsoever. The next one is Losanthia Beastbane. Now, this is a fusion I really just didn't understand. He's a mixed fusion, which are notoriously too difficult for early game players. Yeah, his sole area seemed to be Hydra progression, so the people who would want him can't get him, and the people who can get him wouldn't really use him. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he does okay-ish damage there. He's a bit in the upper end in terms of Hydra carries in that regard, but that's kind of all he does, and I haven't really seen too much of him anywhere, and he got power correct pretty quickly. But he's not terrible, so I'll put him in C. Now, next is Ishiyama the Immovable, or whatever he was called. I don't really get why Spirit Affinity HP Legendary has been this dumping ground for these go-nowhere champions that Plurium insists in making out. You can tell I do this in one take. Insists in printing out there. Like, you know, Greckor's Turndrake from the Thorough Flop Chaos Wigs event? I got him from the Deck of Fate a while ago. He's still in the portal. I don't envision ever taking him out to level for any practical reason apart from champion chase points. Anyway, Ishiyama is a go-nowhere HP nuker who was outdated 2 seconds after he was released, despite a very certain Hades boy saying that, oh, he smacks! Like, yeah, literally every champion smacks if you're hitting targets with decreased defense, weaken, and you give them a million buffs in top-end gear. So, yeah. He's going in D. In terms of who is not going in D, is... Oh, actually, no, that's the next one. So, yes, I said how your Chaos Wix was a flop. Well, the next fusion, Fallen Fellbeard, was part of that. Now, this champion was a bit of an example of play not entirely understanding the wrong game at times, because he was designed to be a counter to Corrosive the Covetous, who was the event dungeon boss at the time. A mythical who we realised is only really any good if she has 3.5 million HP and a bunch of boss immunities. Yeah, as natural red border, she's a bit glum. But, sure, everything he doesn't check accuracy against bosses or the corrupted, and they can't crit on him. However, when Croza had Ward of the Fallen that was doing over 10,000 damage per skeleton, no, she was throwing out 4 of them, she's going to one-shot him anyway and not really care that she can't land critical hits. So his primary purpose kind of failed there. A lot of people did fuse him purely because of the Coalition event, where if you didn't fuse him, you weren't getting those mythical pieces that may or may not have been a Crown of Corruption that then got nerfed anyway because it just should have. 80 speed on a mythical relic. That's so limited, by the way. Yeah, don't do that. Oh, they did it again because of Shuriken. Anyway, Fallen is not the worst. He does decent damage from what I've seen. He does scale up. He either have, like, you know, the Nature's Bounty, Irific Coronet, and also his A2 increases attack, so he's okay in that regard, but he's not going to be your first choice at Arena Nuka. So I'll put Fallen Fellbeard in B. And next is another mixed fusion, Titus Blackplume. Now, this is a pretty questionable release, I would say. I skipped him because I didn't have Wixwell or Brogni, so I couldn't really use him anyway. Do I regret skipping him? Not really. I was also expecting him to get nerfed because he seemed a little bit silly. Turns out they didn't, it's just, okay, now if you have a Wixwell and a Titus with, like, bad gear and no blessings and 4 Painkeepers, you do more damage to Hydra than a full team of 6-star plus 4 mythicals. I mean, there's a bit more to it than that, but it's an exaggeration for emphasis. Anyway, Titus is kind of broken. If you have the things to use him, then he does absurd amounts of damage and will bloat your... I live next to a main road, this sort of thing happens all the time. He'll bloat your damage numbers significantly past what you're otherwise doing before. So, yeah, he goes in S. Like, there's, again, no question about that. And after that is Krokad the Throat Ripper. Now, this champion was the long-awaited legendary hound we were all hoping that Packmaster Shaik would have got him. Honestly, I thought they'd just forgotten about him at some point. It really did seem that way, but no, they're just leaving the legendary hound in the oven for a year, and it turns out that he's come out golden brown, because this actually is a great champion. He hits really hard. Like, normally I throw bricks at attack champions for not hitting hard enough, but the damage Crocad does is sky high. Is he on the same tier as Titus in terms of PvE damage, you know, with the correct setup? No. Is he still really good? Yes, he is. So Crocad is going in A. Also, for anyone wondering, this does not mean that Mad Hatter is better than Crocad. They're about the same in terms of their respective areas. That's why it's as it is. I didn't want to make anything more complex. After that is Donatello. Now, Donatello is from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collab that many people are still campaigning to have completely removed to this day, because, you know, yeah, Leonardo hard 1v4ing teams is perfectly fine. Don't like that? Just pull him. Oh, wait. You can't. But if you've seen my live arena videos, if you haven't, so be it, then I have had great success with this champion. Obviously, he's essential for the Turtles comp in general, but he's just another really versatile support who will bring a lot of things to your roster. Now, if I was going to make an A+, then I'd put him in here, but I really do think that he is better than sort of Crocad and Mad Hatter. Not quite as if you miss him, you're bricked as Fabian or the illegal stuff that Titus does, but I'm going to put Donatello in Ash regardless, just because of how much I enjoy picking him over and over and over and over in live arena. It's like, please just pick something else apart from the same 5 champions each game. Okay, are you buying me shards so I can pull more champions on? Okay, and next is going to be Granite Dorkkeep. Now, you know how I said before about Grakos Turndrake and Ishiyama, how they go nowhere HP nukers for the Spirit Affinity? Yeah, he's no one of them. Now, the fact that he can actually interact with Stone Skin means he's a bit better than those, and his damage is fine, but again, he's not going to be your first choice for being a nuker. He's only as good as your ability to go first, and outside of that, he's kind of like okay at best. And no one fused this guy purely because everyone was waiting for, you know, the guaranteed Leonardo events. Yeah, I'm sure that you're sick to fucking death of myself talking about Leonardo now. Everyone else. I mean, not myself personally, but, you know, people harp about Leonardo all the time. Leonardo, you know, Defiant Child Syndrome. I never grew up. But he just wasn't very great. I don't think anyone regretted skipping him, so he's going to go in C, purely because he's a bit better than Ishiyama, but not much better than anything else. And then after that, we have Sanguine Maria. Now, Sanguine Maria was a champion who would have been Titus tier broken, except that they saw a little bit of sense that maybe her taking 40 turns in a row is not exactly balanced. Like, straight up, she was solo clearing hard mode dungeons all by herself, and Finite was having his shield shredded away, and then he never got a turn while she just tore his entire world and all of his sort of... I've forgotten where I was going with this. Basically, she tore a lot of things apart. However, when they nerfed her, they hit her too hard. 33% chance was too high, 0% chance against bosses too low. I'd have put it down to 11%. That would have made her significantly less reliable. I could have fumbled the entire word there. Again, this is all done in one take. But wouldn't have gimped her entirely. But now she's kind of another generic Ryan Nuka who isn't probably going to be used over anyone else you were already comfortable using. Apart from that, I don't know, I guess Siege limited content, I don't know. B or C. Yeah, I mean, I'll put her in C just because everyone was very, very unhappy with how hard she got hit. And then we have Yukimasa, the whatever his name is. I remember his first name, like Frost Demon, Snow Demon, something like that. Now, this is a champion who I would have covered, except for the fact that every time a fusion gets released, there's about 5,000 different content creators with varying views from 100,000 to 10 who cover it, and I couldn't reasonably get this to stand out if I just made another video talking about him, so I just didn't bother. But he's a champion who seems to be designed around idea rather than logic. Like, sure, his A3 equalizing his lower defense stat with a target would be fine, except that this is just worse than ignoring defense entirely, which is not hard to do nowadays when, you know, there's a relic that gives you 20% ignore defense completely for free. But past that, you had the thing of, oh, he has to let himself be CC'd in order for his kit to do unique things. Name one attack champion in the game who is going to get himself crowd controlled and then see the light after that. This is not one of them. The rest of his kit, in terms of the freeze, the revive, the block actives, he'd been better as a support. Honestly, if he was a support, I probably would have used him just purely for roll compression, but as an attack champion, he's just way glacier for no real reason. Like, I know that it's the sort of thing, is like 80% of the non-supports in the game would be better if they were a support, but hey, we've got to have things that aren't just, you know, the most objectively broken rule of the game with, you know, the highest speed, durability, power budget, etc. I mean, supporting this game is a pretty interesting specimen, but everything I've seen of him doesn't seem overly impressive just because he's got more than a couple of design flaws in there. I think he's got some use for some people, but not for me. So I'm going to put him in B. And that is all of them. What will next year bring? Probably some more generic arena nukers, some more must-use support, another March and July. If you don't get these, then, hey, what's your excuse? You had the shards, right? You didn't? Why not? But, yeah. That's everything. I really don't have anything more to say now. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let you go. Yeah, really, I'm not going to hold your attention any longer. You can turn off the video now and click on something else. Or I can just, like, end the video and it'll go into the next thing in your playlist, which may or may not be something completely different. Yeah, we're done, so. See ya.